Hello everybody, it's the Commander here, and I'm here to bring you guys the second episode of the Commander series. So just a brief refresher of what happened in the first episode. The Commander and his fire team, as well as a few Marines, were defending a very important anti-air battery against the Covenant. Eventually they won the battle, and while the Marines were getting picked up, an elite who rode in on that Spectre right there asked the ODST fire team if they could help the elite free his Shipmaster, who is currently being held in this large warehouse right here. So, in this specific scene right here, we have the UNSC and elite who's trying to neutralize all these Covenant forces on the exterior of the warehouse. So without further ado, let us dive into the very specific details. So, let's start over on this side of the mock. So, right here we have the Commander, and he is holding dual SMGs. And we have one squad of Covenant who are charging the Commander, and he's gunning them down with that SMG. And the other SMG is aimed right at the Covenant forces in front of him. Directly behind him, we have a Spectre with Mark on the gun, and it's a little hard to tell, but the elite's in the driver's seat. And he is just providing cover fire for the Commander. And finally, the last member of the team, Sarah Palmer, is holding a sniper rifle, who is currently trying to neutralize the gunner of that shade turret. She's also being charged by a squad of Covenant, specifically 2 grunts and a brute, which is the same kind of squad as the one that's charging the Commander. So now let's get to the Covenant side of the mock of the scene. So you guys will notice they have a pretty elaborate defense setup. So they have 2 barriers, 2 plasma guns, a shield, 2 shields, a watchtower, snipers, and a shade turret on the very top of the screen. And then we have a Ghost that's currently not being operated at the moment, but will soon be. So, starting with this area with the 2 barriers, we have 2 grunts operating the plasma cannons that are currently trying to blast the ODSTs. We have 2 brutes back there, a captain and a major with brute shots, who are also trying to neutralize the Spectre and the Commander and Sarah Palmer. And we just have some assorted Covenants. Then we have a bodyguard who's trying to protect the watchtower. Then right here we have the brute in charge of protecting the warehouse. And he's a brute chieftain who's holding a fuel rod cannon, who is a huge threat to Mark on the Spectre. And we have another bodyguard, obviously, who's protecting him. Then we have a grunt who's about to board that Ghost to reinforce the defense. And then we have 2 Jackal snipers and a shade turret who are currently trying to provide even more cover fire and to pick off the ODSTs. And then right under the entrance of the warehouse, we have some Covenant reinforcements. So we have all the details covered, so we can now move on to the next scene. So, as you can see, the Commander's fire team and Elite were able to successfully neutralize all the Covenant forces that were guarding that warehouse. Fortunately for them, a Pelican was able to drop in and drop some Marines off to help reinforce their attack on the brute forces that are holding the Shipmaster captive. So, one more thing I would like to say before I go on that I forgot to say in the last scene was this mission still takes place in the storm. However, it's closer to the end of the mission than the episode before. So without further ado, let's move on to the next scene. Right after the ODSTs and the Elites received reinforcements from the Pelican in the previous scene, they advanced into the warehouse where they would fight the brutes in the hopes of freeing the Elites. So, one thing I would like to say before I move on is I removed the wall of the warehouse closest to the camera and the ceiling of the warehouse so you guys have a better angle of what's going on inside the warehouse. So that out of the way, let's dive into the details. So, on the UNSC side, we have a lot of the UNSC forces who are hiding behind cover, such as a crate, a traffic barrier, and a fuel tank. And this is because of the Covenant's excellent defensive setup, which consists of 2 barriers and 2 heavy plasma cannons. And behind those barriers, we have brutes holding very powerful weaponry, like things such as carbines, brute shots, and many other very deadly brute weapons. In front of the barriers, we have 2 brutes who are trying to engage the Commander and Sarah Palmer in close quarter combat to try and mess them up so it would distract the UNSC. So, as you can see, we have 2 brute miners operating the plasma cannons who are providing even more cover fire for their allies that are in front of them. And finally, behind them, we have the brute chieftain who is currently just supervising his subordinates. And right behind him, we have the makeshift prison where the elites are being held. And right here, we have the control that is used to control those prison bars right there, which are made of that signature energy that the Covenant seem to love to use. So, this is going to be a very long, miserable firefight in the middle of this warehouse, just because of how well each side's defenses and all that stuff are set up. So, with that being said, let's move on to our next and final scene. After a lot of intense fighting with the Covenant, the Marines were able to successfully free the Elites. So, right now, the Marines and the Elites are enjoying a little break from that intense combat. And they're just visiting and telling each other stories and just catching up. So as we move a little to the right, we have some dead brutes from all that fighting in that last scene. So then that brings us to the commander and Sarah Palmer, who are currently talking to the shipmaster right here, who is currently just thanking the commander for freeing him and his men. However, he's also telling him that a lot of his men is still being held captive, and his ship is still in the hands of those evil brutes. So then right here, we have Mark, who is currently operating those controls, just making sure everything is okay. And my final character I would like to introduce you guys, right here, behind that shipmaster, is the Spec Ops commander, who is pretty much the second in command of the ship. And before I say anything about what he's doing, I just would like to remind you guys that this very last scene is taking place during the last moments of the storm. And as you guys know, the Prophet of Truth activated the portal to the Ark, and he went through them. However, right after that happened, a mysterious Covenant ship emerged from hyperspace. And, well, that elite's watching all that stuff happen. And, well, as you guys know, when that Covenant ship crashed, everything took a turn for the worse.